Okay, moving along here. In the last video, I did set up my site and I'm ready to roll and start creating my divs. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I could either click this Create New, or I can go to File, New. It'll bring up the same dialog box, New Document. And for this, we're going to be using the New Document, and under Document Type, let's use HTML. In the framework, we're going to keep it at None. You can include a title here, and you can add your name if you'd like, or I could just say what this is, and this is a CSS layout. And right now I'm not going to attach a CSS yet. A cascading style sheet, we'll learn a little bit later on how to do that and move your styles into that new CSS or cascading style sheet. So let's hit Create. Now you can see that I've got a new document. I also have in my code view here is split and design. So I am going to be working in design. I suggest that you work in design. It makes it a lot easier. Now for me, I'm used to seeing my split code here, but some of you may like to work in the WYSIWYG or what you see is what you get window. Again, I enjoy looking at my HTML as it happens there in the coding. So what I'm going to do is I have my cursor inside of the design view in my what you see is what you get, or my design window here. And I'm going to insert. So I'm just going to go to insert. And again, you can use your insertion panel up here where I've docked it. Now, if your interface looks a little bit different than mine, that's because I have it set to my customized workspace here. To the right hand side, you can see that I have Alex selected. That's what I've named my workspace, because you do need to have some certain windows. Now if I go back to the standard, you'll see that this kind of changes everything, and so again, I've made sure that I have my own customized. Now if you haven't done that, you can watch my video on how to customize your workspace. That might make things a little bit easier. But for this, it's important to have at least your properties at the very bottom here showing. And to get that, you can go to Window and Properties, make sure that's clicked. I also have my Insert tab, which could be found over on the left hand side or the right hand side over here, or on the top where I've docked it. Now for some reason I've been finding that there has been a few glitches inside of Dreamer, wouldn't you know it, that if I click div sometimes that doesn't bring up the dialog box for div. I'm going to try it right now, and yeah, you can see that it's not bringing up my dialog box. So what I find is if that's not working correctly is to go to your application menu at the very top and click on Insert Div, and that'll pop up the Insert Div dialog box. Now, just a little, tour of this here. It's going to be important at some point on the insert to pay attention to where you're inserting that div. Currently, I have this at insertion point, which is exactly what I want. And you also have two types of selectors that you could choose from. Now, please read up on classes and IDs. Remember that classes can apply to any portion of your pages as many times as you'd like, and they're a formatting mechanism that you can use to format, add color, size, and type of font that you're going to be using. And the ID can only be used one time on each page. So for this, we're going to be doing IDs for the div structure itself. And as per my nifty little planning sheet or sketch that I have a container. So I'm going to start with that. And I'm going to name that container. And again, you could use wrapper if you'd like. There's wrapper and container. Both are kind of the same thing. Next, I'm going to click on New CSS Rule. And for this, it's important to keep note of your dimensions for everything. You can see that the selector name is container and you don't have to type in the hashtag. It automatically populates for you in this area here when you click OK on the last little dialog box. Next, I'm going to hit OK, and that'll bring up your CSS rule definition for my container. In the category area here, what you want to do is you can, and to make things easier so that you can see them, is I like to add a little bit of color to this. I don't like to add very dark colors because then I won't be able to see any font that comes in here. But I'll go ahead and select the color for this. And although the container is going to be hidden behind all of the other divs, I just kind of like to add colors to this. So I'll add, a light blue to that. And the two important ones here are the background, I would say, for this assignment, and then the box area. In the box area, you want to make sure that your width and your height are included in here. So I'm gonna say 1000. I'm gonna go by my formatted one here, 1000 and 1000. So 1000 in width. Make sure that pixels is there, but usually that's what pops up. So 1000 by 1000, so in width and height. The next thing I want to do is make sure that this div is centered, and to center a div within your page and so that it shows up centered in a browser, you need to uncheck same for all in the margin area. Here's the margin area, uncheck same for all, and in right, I'm going to just click down this thing, you could type it in, auto, and then left, auto. So I'm just going to click on that down arrow, select auto, and then hit OK, and then OK. And you can see that this pops in. Now for the first div, you'll see that there is a placeholder text that always populates within the divs. And you can see that it says content for ID container goes here. For this container, the container as it actually is just the container for the rest of the divs, so we won't need any placeholder text there. So it's highlighted already, and I'm just going to hit the delete key on my keyboard, and that's going to delete that. Now it's important not to move anything else. You can see that there's a slight cursor that is pulsating there, and you can kind of see that that's where my cursor is. So right now I'm going to go ahead and add the next div, and that's going to be insert div, same process. And you can see here that insertion point is okay because I do want it to be inside of my container. And then I'll just go again to ID, and my next div is header. So again, the hashtag, you don't have to type that in until it actually auto generates that. New CSS rule, there it is, and then click OK. Here is my CSS rule definition for header again. I'm going to just go over to the background, and so that I could see that it is created the div, I'm going to add a color to that. Kind of a different color here. And then go to box. And this is where you have to start kind of keeping tab of how many pixels you're going to be using. Again, I have 1000 in width and 1000 in height. So I want to make sure that the width is always 1000. That's going to fit right into my container. And for the height for the header, I'm just going to use 250. So that's going to be, the width of, or the height of my of my header. I don't need to do anything for padding or margin at this point. I'm going to do all of that for the text only. Now if I do add padding or margin, that's going to increase the size of my width and or the height. So I don't want to mess with that right now. I'm just going to hit OK and then OK. And you can see that the header came in. Again, it came in with some placeholder text. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to eventually use that to start creating my styles for it. Okay, so this is important. What happens next is I could either select this and hit my right arrow to make sure that that's not in the place where it needs to be, but you can click inside, it doesn't matter. Because I'll show you what happens here when I insert another div, and this is what's really important. I'm going to insert my next div, which is going to be the nav bar, so I'll go ahead and give that a name. Now before I hit OK here, or new CSS rule, I can see that it says add insertion point. Now I want to make sure that this is after a tag. And then what happens here is you have a selection that pops up here that says after the container. Well, no, I want that after the header. So if you press down on this little down arrow, it'll give you a list of all the divs that you have available. And right now what I want is I want this navbar to go after my header. Okay. Then I'll click New CSS Rule and click OK. Same process, I'll go in and add a color. Make it kind of on the light side. Go to Box. And for my navbar, it's only going to be, again, 1,000 pixels wide because that's the width of my container. But the height is only going to be 50. So I'm going to have kind of a rather small navigation there, not too much information. And again, leaving this as is, I'll click OK and then OK.